Not your father's PowerPoint at all. I did a logarithmic scale version of this, so you can see that even in a log scale, we're still changing character. It's not just simply a nice constant slope, even in log scale. So instead of showing 1 to 10 and 10 to 20 and 1800 to 1810 is the same, it's showing basically the change in proportion. So that if you have a steady acceleration of, let's say, 1%, it should show as a nice flat line on logarithmic scale. Or not flat, but a linear line on log scale, whereas it would look exponential in conventional scale. And you can see here, and by the way, this was showing the average, this particular data source is showing the average value of gold for that year. So this is the value of $1,600 estimated for 2011. The current price of gold is well north of $1,800. So even in the last couple of weeks, this is steepened. So if there's one take-home point that I really want to give, this is Ernest Hemingway. I think that was a particularly witty quote. If there's a take-home point here, this is a process of bankruptcy. This is not a simple matter of, and I disagree vehemently with the Mises Institute folks, and unfortunately Mises himself was a fan of the so-called linear quantity theory of money. You know, if you double the money supply, you double the general price level. George Weissman talks about this in his textbook Capitalism, the general price level, and it's an aggregate, you add up all the prices of everything extant. You know, houses are falling, and fine wines are falling, and corn is rising, you average all these things up and you come up with a general price level. This is a process of bankruptcy, and per Father Hemingway here, this is not a linear, smooth, nice straight line. This is a gradual process that suddenly falls off a cliff. And so I'm going to be talking to 6 different topics. What I want to do is take a variety of different topics in economics and kind of integrate them.
Are you going to explain that in your talk off the cliff? Because I didn't understand what you just said.
That it fell off the cliff.
Well, okay, so I'm going to be addressing this further, but to answer your question.
Okay.
The basic concept is we have this dollar. You know what? Let me explain this a little bit later. I'm going to be getting to this. I want to talk about the origins of money. I want to talk about. So I'll just rotate this here so everybody can see this. Isn't this a neat tool? Talking about gold first, and then paper money and what the differences are. It's not simply that gold can't be printed. Yes, it is true gold cannot be printed, and there are a number of other really important differences. I want to talk about interest rates and the formation of interest under our current paper system as well as gold. I want to talk about a big bugaboo. This is where I'm going to make some probably highly controversial statements about the nature of fractional reserve banking. I want to talk about arbitrage. And then finally, I want to talk about gold backwardation, which may sound like a very esoteric and obscure concept related to the futures markets, but I think it's actually highly important. So, origins of money. When people started out, I don't know if this is 18,000 years ago or 9,000 years ago, wherever it was, people were engaged in making a subsistence living. They accumulated no extra capital. The amount of time and labor that it took to produce a living was basically all the time in the day. They were hunting, they were pulling berries off the bushes, whatever it is they were doing. And gradually, very slowly at first, they were able to accumulate enough capital to be able to start to produce a surplus, and that's something you can trade. And this is an enormous improvement in the lot of mankind, because now for the first time you have the specialization of labor. Some people are naturally better at producing shoes, some people are naturally better at producing corn, so they can trade. The problem you have is in this kind of direct exchange, the so-called coincidence of wants. What happens when the person who has corn to sell and wants to buy shoes runs into the shoemaker, but the shoemaker doesn't happen to want corn? No transaction. And so what money does is it allows trade to occur indirectly. You sell the corn for money, you sell the money for shoes, and now suddenly there's exponentially greater possibilities of interactions of trade between people as a result of this. And so over time, people use all sorts of different things as money. They use salt, they used wheat, they used cattle, they used seashells in various places. But over time, one good evolves to be the most marketable good. And that's the good that is Does all make sense? I don't want to get too bogged down into questions, but if there's something I'm saying that totally sounds obtuse, just somebody just interrupt and say so. Oops. So there's a really, really, really important concept here, and this is central to Austrian economics. This is really the central idea of Karl Menger, who was the founder of the Austrian school back in the 1860s or 1870s. He observed that when you talk about the price of corn, let's say, and first of all, prices are expressed in terms of the monetary commodity. You would say so-and-so many ounces of silver, so-and-so many ounces of gold per bushel, or per whatever. There isn't actually one price. You can't say the price. There's actually a bid and an ask, or a bid and an offer. And they're different. And the pressures that are on them are different. And it's really important in economic analysis to understand that. There are actually two monetary commodities. And so we talk about marketability in the large, which today would be gold. The other word for that is liquidity. If you want to bring $1 billion worth of gold to market, you're going to have very little impact on the bid. Right? So if you need to sell something, you have to sell it on the bid. If you need to buy something, you have to pay the offer. And the process of selling something on the bid presses the bid. The process of buying something at the offer lifts the offer. This is a very, very, very important concept. If you bring gold to market, you'll have the least impact on the bid as compared to any other commodity. If you bring $1 billion worth of copper to the market, you will destroy the copper market. The market will go no bid because it's just an endless, infinite supply. And so and silver is the good that has the most marketability in the small. And so what we refer to here, the bid, if you look at a normal commercial quantity, which in the case of silver would be 1,000 ounces, in the case of gold would be 100 ounces. You can measure the size of the bid-ask spread as a percentage of total price. Gold has the narrowest, even today in our fiat system, by the way, gold has the narrowest spread. It's like half the spread of the S&P 500 futures, which is the next most liquid thing in the universe. Very, very small spread. That spread actually widens as you go to much larger quantities, and it widens if you go to much smaller quantities. If you want to go into a coin shop and buy 1/10 of 1 ounce of gold, you're going to pay quite a premium over the price if you go to Kitco.com and find out what's happening on the quote-unquote official gold price today. So the spread widens as you get to large quantities, and the spread widens as you get to small quantities. So the concept of hoardability, and I'll talk about this later in the formation of the interest rate. The concept of hoardability is that if you want to take a little bit of your weekly salary and buy something as a way of hoarding wealth or hoarding value, you lose the least in getting in and out of silver. It has the bid-ask spread widens the least as you get to small quantities. It's perfectly reasonable to buy $42 worth of silver today, and you could get that for a pretty small premium, a pretty small bid-ask spread relative to, let's say, if you want to do $40 worth of gold, and you're talking, someone's going to have to shave off the corner of a coin, and no one's going to be willing to do that unless you get a big premium. Question, sir?
That's kind of a very interesting observation. Someone observed that you pay the most premium in a restaurant when you buy really cheap wine, and you buy really, really expensive wine. So
That's
someone
the same, yes.
said very interesting.
So if sort of a normal bottle is $50, the $8 bottle of wine in the restaurant is a big premium. The $8,000 bottle is a big premium, but they do the most business in $50 bottles. Absolutely, it's the same exact concept.
Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
And if these questions are going to slow you down, then forget about it, because maybe this presentation is going to go like findings, but bid and ask, the transaction takes place at one price, presumably somewhere in between the bid and the ask, right? I mean,
It's not between. If let's say the bid is 10 and the ask is 11, and you want 10.50, and you're a bidder, you can put in a new bid at 10.50. And maybe some other person comes along and takes the 11, and now the new ask is 11.50, and someone else comes along and takes 11.50, and you're just priced out of the market, or maybe somebody hits you. But it's discrete. It's always discrete. There's always either the bid or the ask, or you can try to bargain with the market and put something in the middle, and thus forming the new bid. So the marginal bidder always keeps changing from minute to minute or even microsecond to microsecond. Who's that marginal bidder, and what's the value of the marginal bid?
So, trying to understand that better, you can bid whatever you want, but if the ask, I'm sorry, yeah, if the person who's asking doesn't come down to where your bid is,
turns out that the person who's, if you're putting in a bid as a buyer, the person who's meeting that is not typically the person with the ask. It's actually a different party altogether. Anyway, way outside the scope, but someone's reminding me of time. I have a fair amount of
You buy
material.
at the ask, and you sell it this year.
Yes, you have to, if you want to buy right now, you have to pay the ask. If you want to sell right now, you